Hello, dear listener. It's been a rather eventful week with all of the protests and events taking place in the aftermath of Jason Stockley, the white cop, being acquitted of murder. Um, being that I said previously in another post that 2014 was the year that I really changed as a person in regards to, I'd been studying racism a little bit up through 2013, but after 2014, being what took place in Ferguson, after Eric Garner's murder, after what even took place later that year with Tamir Rice and John Crawford and all of the non-indictments and acquittals, I got as angry as I possibly could back then. I couldn't possibly top that as far as anger right now. I've been exposed to too much information in regards to white people today and in the past. This constant consumption of information, I've already come to so many conclusions that, white people doing what they do isn't enough to infuriate me. It's not that I've become cynical in regards to racism. It's just that I'm tired of black people, us as a group, not coming to conclusions and taking a different course of action. I'm tired of seeing the same response. I'm tired of us just responding rather than initiating things. Just in the news and the news in general this week, there have been so many instances. There's a St. Louis cop this week that called Black Lives Matter domestic terrorists, and used a term that I've seen several times over the years in regards to white supremacists, usually the ones that attacked Obama and his supporters, referring to them as the Klan with a tan. I've read that over the years several times. White supremacists use that, and being that a cop used that expression, and referring to Black Lives Matters as domestic terrorists. It is amazing, considering all the articles I read written by white supremacists and on the frequency in which they refer to their victims, non-white people, black people, comparing them to the Klan. It is amazing how frequently they do this. On top of the fact that they always refer to the Klan in past tense, as if the Klan doesn't exist today. I'm in St. Louis. When the Klan rallies to this day, the police just let them do. The police let them do whatever they want to. The police have more of a problem with Black Lives Matters rallying or protesting than they do with the Klan, and then they talk like the Klan is some remnant of the past. And these are the same people that talk of like racism is something liberals made up, like the Klan never existed to begin with, but then they want to bring up the Klan when they want to condemn Black Lives Matter or the NAACP or Antifa. That's the only time in which they reference the Klan. When the Klan rallies, they don't even talk about it at all. Their mouths are totally shut. And to compare Black Lives Matters to call them domestic terrorists really says a lot to me, considering that in this country, in America, white people are the only group with a history of bombing people in this country. They're the only group that have dropped bombs on people. And law enforcement is the only institution in this country with a history of bombing people, even children. So for a cop to refer to a group with no history of bombing or murder to the extent that they are, to refer to them as domestic terrorists, it really lets you know the distorted logic that a racist, functions by. The way their minds function. You're dealing with, that's Nazi logic. The people you're dealing with. And I say that there's nothing to debate when it comes to cops. You're dealing with, they are basically at this point like a satanic cult at this point. You're dealing with profoundly evil people in the business of evil. This is how their minds work. Everything is reversed, And of course, atypical other stories that I've read this week. A black student was attacked by a group of white men at Cornell University. The white man in Baton Rouge that was arrested for killing two black men and was reading Hitler speeches or something. A white security guard at a Catholic university in St. Paul, Minnesota, who shot himself and blamed it on a black man. A volunteer firefighter named Tyler Royston in Ohio posted on Facebook that one dog is more important than a million niggers. A volunteer firefighter, yeah, said that, and he was suspended. He wasn't just suspended, because he, again, white people. Nobody's ever quick to dismiss white people. You can always bring them back. Like, we have to get to the bottom of this. And a couple of instances of white female teachers posting racist things on Facebook. One female elementary school teacher named Rebecca Montgomery in Middleton, Ohio, posted on Facebook a picture of a black girl with a Tigger from Winnie the Pooh on her head, and with a comment talking about stealing from my group since we already had a Tigger on a nigger. I don't know exactly what that means, but this is what she posted on Facebook. And of course, a Mississippi teacher named Cammie Roan, I think is how her name is. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced. Posted on Facebook that black people should go back to Africa. Say typical things white supremacists talk about. Oh, black people need to stop complaining. If you don't like it here, go back to Africa. And of course, in the aftermath of that, she claimed that her account was hacked. That seems to be a routine thing now that white people do. Because there's a city councilman named Gary D. Moore who posted on Facebook welfare jokes, looting jokes, comments about I'm proud to be white and don't let that get out because people think I'm racist if I say that. And of course he mentions Obama in his racist comments too, and he claimed that his account was hacked as well. It's becoming a routine thing with white supremacists when they get caught on social media. There's also a Florida cop named Michael Hamill who's on social media was making tons of Jewish jokes and also joked about putting people in ovens the Hitler way. Again, I'm only acknowledging this because, again, a cop. A white cop in Florida making jokes about putting people in ovens, quote unquote, the Hitler way. Again, there is nothing to debate about cops. A very telling thing this week was really the response to what has been going on in St. Louis. Because like I've said before, white supremacists are very media conscious. They're very image conscious. And whenever their culture is exposed and they look bad, they immediately go into action defending their position. And I've read so many articles over the past week written by the National Review and other white supremacist publications trying to present the narrative that the police rarely kill black men. I think there's even an article that was the title of the article is the police rarely kill black men. And my immediate thought was, compared to who? Again, and racists, and they love to present statistics to prove their point. Racist, because to them statistics are subjective. They can distort statistics to mean whatever they want to, and they think they can prove scientifically that cops don't kill black men, that the police don't target black people. They always love to use statistics. Again, like Nazis love to use statistics to justify mistreating people too. Like they're full of stats, because again, and they can be distorted to mean whatever they want to. They don't care about facts. They could just throw and they actually claim that the media has distorted this whole narrative in regards to police violence. The media claiming that police love to claim that the media is against them. Again, I'm going to say law enforcement in this country, law enforcement is an institution, and institutions in this country are not against each other. The media is not against the cop. They're in line. They all work together. The cops seem to think that body cam footage, dash cam footage that shows cops doing what they do is the media distorting the image to make cops look bad. It's pretty much to them being caught in the act is the media making them look bad. To them, objective reporting on the part of the media is to conceal evidence, pretty much. That's basically what they're saying. Because the media doesn't do anything to attack the police. The media, all the media does is present 24/7 the idea that crime is always at epidemic proportions and black people running all over the country, killing people left and right, robbing people left and right. And the media aids the police and the narrative that anybody that the police hurt deserves it because the country is out of control, you know, because crime everywhere. That's all the media does. And yet cops are always attacking the media because there's always a camera running whenever they're being violent towards a black person. And they claim that that's the media attacking them. Again, it tells you the mindset of what it means to be a cop. Like, the media is not against them. They just don't want the truth to be told. They want people to turn off the cameras when they're clubbing people in the head or stepping on people or shooting people. And again, this week, the cops resorted to illegal tactics to dealing with crowds using chemical agents, just like during Ferguson, they were illegally using tear gas. And of course, no consequences. Again, like this in the aftermath of that Ferguson stuff, no cops went to jail for all of the illegal stuff that they were doing, and yet no one faced any consequences. And again, there's nothing to debate when cops across the board never face any consequences. The people who support the police pretty much, I mean, their mindset is that of authoritarians, totalitarians, imperialists, fascist, you name it. That is their mindset. They can do no wrong. They're always in the right. Their force is always justified. That's the mindset. No consequences, ever. There's nothing to debate about cops or the people who support the police. You know where these evil people are coming from. These people know the police are here to protect their interest, to maintain the power dynamic that exists in the country. They see the police as their personal army, and they're going to defend them at all costs. And just being that there's another white cop is acquitted of murder. I mean, this is a weekly occurrence, a daily occurrence at this point. It just made me think about the incredibly large number of killer cops that are at large, that are walking the streets free right now. Known killers walking around free as a bird. And, you know, Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, is really about a whole class of people that have been created in this country by the legal system stripping people of their rights who've been incarcerated and basically creating this whole class of people that have no rights. I hope that somebody someday writes a book about this whole class of killer cops that are running free in this country. I mean, it has to be in the thousands. I mean, it has to be even more. I mean, it is absurd, the frequency in which, I mean, even the cops, it is ridiculous. The number of cops that known to have killed someone who are not in jail, who are just walking around free, still have jobs in law enforcement, most of them do. And I guarantee none of those cops are living in the gutter, you know, struggling, unless they have just really purposely screwed up their life. White people, racists, always take care of each other. When a white person, I mean, just saw in the aftermath of Darren Wilson murdering Michael Brown, how all these white people rallied to support him. And after he murdered Michael Brown, pretty much white people put Darren Wilson into witness protection. Like, they wouldn't even release his name for days. They wouldn't even want to release a picture of him. I have never seen that before. That's why I said 2014 was just, for me, was, you know, everything changed for me after that. My eyes were open to white people in regards to how the cocoon that they put him in and protected him from any outside sort of suggestion that he did anything wrong. And on top of that, giving him $1 million in donations. I mean, just told me in white culture in regards to defending a white killer. Because I never see black people rallying to give a black person money for killing somebody. That's white people. White people, violence is their culture. And white people always stand behind a white person who kills, a white person that's violent. I mean, these are the people who put, people like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood on a pedestal when these guys are icons of cinematic violence. They're known for playing violent characters, and that's why they're popular in white culture. That's why they're the iconic figures. White people love violent people. I never see black people. Black people don't put violent people on a pedestal, or people that are known for acting out violence. We don't put those people on a pedestal. Again, it tells you the difference between white people and black people. I mean, even though white people have conditioned black people to be so much like them, I never see black people in mass rallying around the image of a black person who's known for killing people or anything. I never see that. Or sending, thousands or millions of dollars to support a black person who's alleged to have killed somebody. You never see this. Only white people do this. Particularly if this white person has killed a non-white person. I mean, even Daniel Holtzclaw, who only has one white parent, was getting donations when he was accused of raping all those black females in Oklahoma. He got like $10,000 worth of donations from white people. So that tells you everything you need to know. Like just like George Zimmerman, he only had one white parent. That was enough. He killed a black person. Support him. And regarding white people and all these killer cops, I mean, it is funny how white people always racist and always complain, always talk about, well, white people get killed by cops too. Even white people don't care when white people get killed by cops. White people are never up in arms in this country when a white person gets killed by cops. White people are never white people riot for fun. They riot when their sports team wins a championship or something. They don't riot or cause any disruption when a cop kills a white person. Even if it's a non-white cop who killed a white person, they don't care. Because they know the police are on their side. They know that it must have been an accident. The police aren't out there targeting white people. You never see police posting Facebook rants about attacking white people, talking about how awful white people are. Everything is always anti-black. Or occasionally, every now and then, they'll throw in Latinos or something like that. But most of it is anti-black rhetoric posted by cops. You never see dash cam footage of cops killing white people. I've never seen one. Every time the police kill a black person, there's always dash cam footage. And that's deliberate. It's all designed to desensitize you to violence towards black people. And for you to value white life. You never see on social media, I never see any videos going viral of white people getting killed by cops. I never see it. And that's in line with entertainment and everything. Like, you never see any movies or TV shows that have like a small number of black people fighting off, hundreds of white people or something. Like I've talked about this before, how white supremacist mind, the psychopathic racial personality, white people always love to present narratives in which it's a small number of white people fighting off a huge number of non-white people. And considering how frequently Hollywood loves to make films based on true stories, you never see a Hollywood film with like a small number of black people fighting off hundreds or thousands of white people. There's a long history in this country of white mobs attacking black people. And you've never seen a movie with like a black family having to fight off 5,000 white people, like that black family in Cicero, Illinois, who were trying to move into that neighborhood, and they had like 5,000 white people descended on their home. You would never see a movie with a situation like that. And see white people presented in some dehumanized way with like some sea of white people being depicted like zombies and black people having to fight them off. You never see that. But you frequently see the reversal. You're always supposed to be comfortable with violence directed towards black people in entertainment media. I mean, Tarantino might have claimed to try to reverse that with Django Unchained. He's supposed to enjoy seeing a black person kill white people. But in that movie, the white people are still more humanized than the black people are in the movie. He didn't dehumanize the white people who were being killed. And you compare that to a movie like True Lies or something, directed by James Cameron, how the Arabs in that movie are so dehumanized, and you're so expected to enjoy seeing them get killed in droves. You never see a movie with a non-white character killing white people the way Arnold kills those people in that movie. Or a movie like Black Hawk Down, directed by Ridley Scott. The way the Somalians in that movie are they're presented like zombies. They're not presented like human beings. It's not that far removed from that film that I'd mentioned on another post, that Zulu from 1964, where he basically just replaced zombies with Africans. Pretty much the same thing. And so this is the same thing. You never see the reversal of that. And I honestly think that white people with these dash cam videos and body cam videos, I think that they collect these videos, white people. That's why they're always available. Whenever a black person is being degraded, brutalized, beaten up, killed by a cop, the video is always available. And it's always going viral on social media. I think white people collect this stuff, and keep it for souvenirs. Because white people, they love trophies, they love souvenirs from their culture, racism being their culture. And with all the studies white people like to present, and talk about, we're doing this, research has proven this, and research has proven that. I would love to see somebody do some research or study to see how many white people in this country to this day have lynching souvenirs in their homes. I would love to find out that number. I guarantee the number is high. I mean, even to this day, remember last year, some guy bought the gun from George Zimmerman that he used to kill Trayvon Martin. White people love souvenirs from violence against black people. On the subject of Black Lives Matter, my main criticism of them is that they just really it seems like they're just trying to emulate what's happened before and don't really show much intelligence in regards to solving problems. They've had no impact whatsoever over the past few years. They seem to be just in the business of agitation, of causing a disruption, of annoying people. I understand that, at this point in time, black people in America are in the same situation that we were 50 years ago. We're in the exact same situation. Nothing has changed. And these protests and riots are a product of desperation and people who lack a political voice, people that don't have leadership. And I understand that. These black people who live in these poor communities, who don't have any voice whatsoever, who stuff like this happens, violence, white cops come into the neighborhood, brutalizing people, intimidating people, killing people, and get off scot-free, and they figure that no one is going to talk for them. They feel like they're not being heard, they feel invisible, and they figure the only way that they can get some attention drawn to what's happening is by causing a disruption. I understand that, but over the past few years, the Black Lives Matter has pretty much mostly just been an object of ridicule. White supremacists are amused by Black Lives Matter, and they come up with stuff like All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter. I've seen a Lives Matter joke in regards to everything. Racists don't take these groups seriously, although they are irritated by them, and pretty much every white supremacist publication you can think of is obsessed with Black Lives Matter. They associate any anti-cop sentiment with Black Lives Matter, even if you don't have any affiliation, and they can't prove you have any affiliation with it. If you show any sort of hostility towards the cops, they immediately associate you with Black Lives Matter. This is what they do. But Black Lives Matter, to me, it seems to be a product of people who've been fed the myth that the civil rights movement was a success. And so they figure we're going to do the same stuff we did back then and we'll change things. And to me, that shows that most people seem to not really have a thorough knowledge of what happened in the 1960s and what was really happening and how much of a failure the civil rights movement really was. All the generations that came later were just brainwashed into thinking that something was achieved, when anyone who lived in that era, who saw what went down, knows that it was a failure. Or anyone who's done any in-depth reading and first-hand accounts of what went on knows that it was an utter failure. Earlier this week I finished reading the autobiography of Nina Simone, that I Put a Spell on You, her autobiography, and the thing that stood out most to me about that book was it seemed like very late in the book she starts to talk about racism. How as a child she was pretty much conditioned to not even think about racism. That she had been made to feel guilty for even acknowledging racism. It wasn't until very late in her, until you got to the 60s, that she actually started to, after Medgar Evers was murdered and everything, that she started to really see racism and get angry about it. I mean, she'd been taught to see racism as a two-way street. That, with the mindset that, the reason why white people do what they do is because they're in power. If black people were in power and things were reversed, black people would do the same thing to white people. The white people do to them. That's the sort of the logic that she was taught as a kid. The logic of somebody who wants to find a reason to absolve white people of responsibility for their actions. Just, we do the same thing to them, they do to us. They're not evil. They're just, it's just a matter of things being out of balance, which is, it's totally, it is such a twisted sort of logic that just, again, absolves white people of all responsibility for their actions, even to this day, I see black parents that seem to be very afraid of their children hating white people. I've heard black parents say that they don't want their children to hate white people, so they pretty much shield all reality from their children. They don't want their children to know history. They don't want their children to know the facts. They just deflect all that stuff away because they want their children to like white people. I've never heard a white person say, I don't want my children to hate black people. I've never heard that from a white person before. Yeah. It is really, I'm not a parent, but I would think that you want to put your child's safety before anything else, and rather than putting white people's feelings before yourself and your children. It's just very bizarre thing to me that a black parent would be so afraid of their child hating white people. My mother she didn't teach me anything about racism. I would hear her saying things about what was going on in the news, but she never just sat me down and told me things. She didn't seem to be concerned with me hating or liking white people. She would give me a dirty look if I did something she didn't like if I had a picture in my room on the wall of a white woman, she might give me a dirty look. It was more intuitive sort of stuff where I knew what was wrong and what wasn't wrong. But she didn't go to me and show any concern about me liking or not liking white people. That seems to just be bizarre to me. But again, that's like people that have had all of their natural instincts and survival instincts conditioned out of them, where you put another group's feelings before your own. But that's just, that is so bizarre to me. And even though Nina Simone was conditioned like this as a child, to not acknowledge racism, to even feel guilty for acknowledging it, to acknowledge it was to perpetuate it. Even though she had this conditioning, she still, at the end of the civil rights movement, knew that it was a failure. She knew that at the end of the movement, the leaders were either dead, imprisoned, or exiled, leaving the masses of black people with no one to follow but the enemy. And that leads us to today. She knew that. She basically threw up her hands in the late 60s and left the country after the movie ended. She basically said, America betrayed me, America betrayed black people, and she left. And spent most of her life outside of America, also because of tax problems and everything. But she seemed to associate racism with America specifically. Again, in the early to mid 20th century, black people seem to always associate racism with particularly America, and they'd run off to other countries in Europe and talk about how great the white people were there, and it was just racism was just an American problem. I think now we know that that's over time that's been proven to be BS. There was a time when white countries were more in sort of conflict with each other, that there would be distrust and they might behave a little bit differently in the early 20th century with all the wars that they were fighting, with World War II and everything, that there was more dissent between the white countries. Whereas now, over time, as white people's numbers have gone down, And as some of these countries have gotten more and more non-white people living there, white people across the board in every country now all act the same way. Because again, the more their numbers diminish, the more white people are going to revert to their natural state of being, and they're all going to behave. Because to me, white, it doesn't matter where the white person. It doesn't matter if they're French, if they're English, if they're German, or it doesn't matter. Swiss. They all act the same way. Anyone who follows the news knows that black people get treated the same way in any of these countries by the white population. Just the only difference is that in some of these countries, the populations of black people in those countries is much smaller. So there's not even that many people to get upset over what white people are doing. But the people are the same. The culture might be different. The language might be different. But, you know, you're never going to see another war between white people, and white people put a white person up as like the pinnacle of evil. You're not going to see another Hitler. I mean, you'll see a person like Hitler, but you're never going to see white people propping that white person up as the ultimate evil. The only people in this world now, for the rest of as long as white people are in power, only people you're ever going to see put up on a pedestal as like the pinnacle of evil are non-white people. The Saddam Husseins, the Osama bin Ladens, Omar Gaddafi, you know, any non-white person, Fidel Castro. These are the kind of people white people put up as like the most evil people on the planet. They're always going to be non-white from now on. You're never going to see a white person put up as the ultimate evil that we all should be afraid of. Also this week I started reading Marcus Garvey's Message to the People, which is really a book meant to give a whole course on what it's like to be a member of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, his organization, and tells you all what's expected of members, and it just goes lesson by lesson. And he speaks about religion, our physical attire, code of conduct, how you should speak. He broaches everything. I mean, within the first few pages of reading that book, I felt like, remember Malcolm X in the film when he's reading a letter from Elijah Muhammad in the prison cell, and Elijah Muhammad appears before him bathed in this light, and that's how I felt reading the first few pages. I felt like Marcus Garvey was in the room with me. So many things just in the first few pages, things that had been on my mind, conclusions that I'd come to about racism and how we as black people should conduct ourselves when dealing with races, were right there in just the first few pages. You know, I haven't finished the book yet, but I'm planning on finishing it real soon. I'm enjoying, taking great pleasure in reading it, because he's just going over everything in regards to Marcus Garvey, because Marcus Garvey was a black nationalist, and black nationalism is very different from white nationalism. You know, white nationalism is racial terrorism. It's not simply race pride. Marcus Garvey advocated race pride, race purity. You know, he encouraged black people to be more secretive. Like he'd come to conclusions about white people and how to deal with white people, and he'd been watching them obviously, and felt and accepted the rules that white people had laid out. And he felt, all right, if black people are going to come up in the world, we have to adapt to the rules that white people laid out. He encouraged black people to be more secretive, to be more insular, because white people are extremely insular race. You know, they don't. And white people have been doing what they're doing for so long that they don't even need to talk about it. Like, white people, they've taken down all the white-only signs and everything, and yet white people can still, you know, exclude people from jobs, still segregate people, do it all without a word having to be said. It's in second nature to them. You know, and Marcus Garvey wanted black people to adopt that more sort of mindset, to function as a group, to have a singular ideology, philosophy that we all believe in, so we can communicate with each other, keep everything in-house, not let other races know what we're doing or what we're planning. If somebody in the race did something we didn't agree with, like if a black person married a white person, to shun that person, to make that person feel ashamed of what they're doing, but to not do it in a way that white people know what we're doing. to keep it in-house, to take care of all problems in-house. Because right now, black people, like, we're like the loudest people on the planet Earth when it comes to all things. We're not secretive at all. Because there's no organization, there's no joint sort of ideology that we have. We're scattered all over the planet, screaming this and screaming that. We need to be more in-house and be able to go talk to each other in a quiet room in a calm way about what we're going to do, rather than be out in the streets, screaming and holding up signs or burning down buildings. It's like Marcus Garvey was against rioting and protests. Like, if he was alive today, he'd be putting down all this stuff. He wasn't about causing disorder regarding racism. He was about black people having accepted white people's rules and what white people are about. He was all about preparing black people emotionally, spiritually, physically for the transition to our own nation. That's what he was about. Like, he was an admirer of Booker T. Washington, and Booker T. in his sort of pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, doing things for ourselves, being an industrious people. Except Booker T. Washington wasn't about black people having our own nation. He wasn't about that. He was about black people accepting second-class status in white society and not trying to ruffle feathers and get white people upset, not pushing for new rights, not trying to change the society. And Marcus Garvey agreed with that. He had no interest in changing society, changing white people, changing the laws. He accepted that. He was all about building a power base for us. And I'm sure Marcus Garvey never actually met Booker T. Washington. Like, before he got a chance to meet him, Booker T. Washington died, and he never got a chance to meet him. But I'm sure that if he met Booker T. Washington, they probably would have had disagreement about that, because Marcus Garvey was about building a power base for black people, and I'm sure Booker T. Washington probably would have been against that. And of course, with the president that we have today, I'm sure Marcus Garvey would have loved Donald Trump. It's like I'm sure Minister Malcolm X would have loved Donald Trump, because he's so unrefined. I mean, just yesterday, reading about Donald Trump's attacking players that kneel during the national anthem and saying that the owners of the team should fire players for doing that. That the players are, quote unquote, disrespecting our heritage. And again, white people only have one heritage, and that's racial terrorism is their heritage. And again, talking about the American flag like that's their religion. It's just a symbol. But again, symbols, rituals are very important to white people, and they all are associated with racism. And Donald Trump is just such a smug, arrogant Neanderthal that any black person with their eyes wide open, just look at his face and you just see what it means to be white. Just look at. And a black person who's come to conclusions about racism, would rather have him in the White House than a white person that pretends to be against racism. Just a couple of more things that I want to bring up that have just been bouncing around in my head. It's just the amount of reading the amount of things that I read regards to racists trying to discredit their victims by saying that they make everything about racism. Like I've said this before in regards to terms like race baiting and race hustling, trying to make you afraid to even acknowledge it. Okay, just like in reference to Nina Simone being made to feel guilty for acknowledging racism, that frequently the racists that call themselves conservatives, of course what they promote in their publications, nothing is about racism. Unless white people are affected in a negative way, then that's racism. But anything that is affects black people has nothing to do with racism, ever. And they love to, again, with all the ridicule that's thrown at Black Lives Matter, they like to, again, promote the idea that all black people do is attribute everything to racism as a means of trying to discredit accurate talk about racism. They just say, oh, they make everything about racism, as though that's supposed to, mean that you're just full of it and there's nothing intelligent behind your words. Again, that's just a routine tactic, and don't be dissuaded by that. Don't be thrown off by racists playing this sort of game. They do it very frequently. Also, I frequently read about racists insisting that black people's thoughts are dictated by white liberals and Jews. And again, racists always loved the ones the racists that call themselves conservatives always talk about black people being controlled by the Democrats, being controlled by liberals. And I often read Nazis always writing on my YouTube page talking about oh, you shouldn't black people just being controlled by the Jews. The Jews are telling you wrong. And again, these racists that who devote so much time to promoting the idea that they're not racist, that the liberals are racist, or whatever other group they're attacking are racist, and yet they suggest that black people are incapable of independent thought, that our actions are not motivated by information that we've come across or research that we've done. Our thoughts are all entirely controlled by the white people we come into contact with. We don't do our own homework. So again, they're being racist while at the same time pretending not to be. They contradict themselves. My thoughts aren't controlled. There's not a white person on the planet who has any influence over the way I think, in terms of being on the same side with me. Only my thoughts are only dictated by the white people that I'm looking across at and observing their behavior. But there's no white person behind me telling me what to think or what to do. And that is a routine thing with racists that call themselves conservatives, talking about Democrats controlling black people, blah, as if black people we don't do any thinking of our own. We're just being controlled by these white people over here. Make sure to shout that down too, because again, that's just racists pretending not to be racist and at the same time proving how racist they really are. And the last thing I want to talk about is, I don't think that further degradation of our race is fighting against racism. I mean, I read an article a few days ago about some art exhibit where somebody had created some image or painting or some regarding having two black men looking like dogs barking at each other, with white people holding leashes behind them, and it's supposed to be some sort of metaphor for black on black violence, and just a really ugly, disgusting imagery. And the artist claiming, I'm not sure if the artist was a black person or the artist was a white person, the article didn't say. And it's really disgusting, vile imagery. And this person seemed to think that presenting this sort of imagery and having people forced to look at it is somehow fighting against racism. I mean, it's the same sort of mindset that like Emmett Till's mother had when she published a photo of his corpse on the magazine, thinking that if people are forced to confront this sort of stuff, then that's going to change the world. And of course it didn't. Like I've said before, in regards to dash cam videos and body camera videos, I mean, there's decades of footage you can find of cops brutalizing black people. You can go back to, like I said, the 60s with cops sicking dogs on people, spraying people with hoses, clubbing people in the head. It's all there for everybody to see, and it didn't change anything. Just showing footage of black people being hurt, showing degrading imagery of black people is not going to change the world. It's just going to contribute to that desensitization of violence towards black people. Further degrading ourselves is not going to solve our problems. We need to, as Marcus Garvey was all about race pride. Marcus Garvey was about building up the race, about us having a sense of pride, of speaking positively about each other. Of seeing each other in a positive way. That's what race pride is, of always promoting positive things about each other, and any negative things about each other, not jumping on the side of another race and talking about how bad we are. Like today, let's say every week it's another black person, entertainer, athlete, condemning black people. I tell you, no other race has more members of it that spend so much time publicly condemning the race. The sort of thing Marcus Garvey would abhor, that's something that he just would hate so much, because again, he was about race pride, about protecting the race, defending the race, speaking positively of the race, not siding with another race against our race. And so degrading imagery should never be used to make a point in regards to black. White people present enough negative imagery of us. We don't need to be contributing to it. presenting. I mean, like I said, black people, the only people that there's always a camera running when a cop is brutalizing a black person. They'll put a corpse of a black person on a magazine cover. They don't care. The only people that they would do that with. We don't need to contribute to what white people do already. We need to be fighting against them, not helping them. That's all I have to say for right now. I do want to say that, these posts, I mean, at this point, these posts really are just for me. Being that I have over 800 subscribers on YouTube, and yet when I post something trying to spread constructive information, I can barely even get 100 views and a handful of likes for my posts. So obviously what I'm posting it's mostly just for me, just to get stuff out of my head, because hardly anybody is listening to what I'm posting. That's okay, but it's just I can't control that. I am back on Facebook right now, so if there's anyone listening that wants to join me on Facebook, because I mostly use Facebook to follow the news, share articles about racism, and post excerpts from what I'm reading, trying to spread constructive information that gets whoever is receiving the information to think. That's the most valuable use for Facebook, I think. And I had gotten off of Facebook for a while because I wasn't getting very much feedback. I felt like I wasn't being heard, and maybe anyone who's listening to this could join me on Facebook, and we could, actually have, constructive encounters and sharing information with each other. It's just something to think about. That's all I have to say for right now on the state of white supremacy. Thank you very much. Goodbye.